The moment Rose Novak felt the wagon lurch to a stop in the howling blizzard, her heart knew something terrible was about to happen. Her 3-month-old daughter Emma lay bundled in her arms, sleeping peacefully despite the wind that screamed through every crack in the canvas covering. Rose's husband Thomas had been dead for 2 weeks now, kicked in the head by a spooked horse while working the ranch his parents owned just outside Cripple Creek, Colorado. The February storm of 1885 had come down from the mountains with a vengeance, blanketing everything in white and making the roads nearly impassable. Rose had been living with her in-laws since Thomas's death, enduring their cold silences and sharp looks, but she never imagined they would do what they were about to do. "Get out," her mother-in-law, Margaret Novak, said from the front of the wagon, her voice as hard as iron. Rose pulled Emma closer. "What are you talking about? We are miles from town. The storm—" "You heard me. Get out of this wagon right now." Margaret's husband Harold turned in his seat, his weathered face showing no emotion whatsoever. "You are not taking our son's child away from us. That baby belongs to the Novak family. And you are nothing but a seamstress's daughter who trapped our boy into marriage." The words hit Rose like physical blows. "Thomas loved me. We were married properly in the church. Emma is my daughter. That baby is our granddaughter, and she is all we have left of Thomas," Margaret said, climbing into the back of the wagon. Her eyes were wild with grief and something darker. "You will hand her over, or we will take her." Rose tried to scramble backward, but there was nowhere to go. Harold grabbed her arms from behind, while Margaret pried Emma from her grasp. The baby woke and began to cry, her small face turning red with distress. Rose screamed and fought, but Harold was stronger. He dragged her to the back of the wagon and threw her out into the snow. She landed hard, the breath knocked from her lungs, the cold instantly seeping through her dress and coat. "Please," she cried, struggling to her feet. "Please do not do this. She needs me. She is still nursing." But the wagon was already moving, Margaret clutching Emma inside, while Harold urged the horses faster. Rose ran after them, her boots sinking into the deep snow, her lungs burning with cold air and desperation. "Emma! Emma!" The wagon disappeared into the white curtain of falling snow, and Rose collapsed to her knees in the middle of the road, sobbing so hard she thought she might die right there. The wind cut through her clothing like knives, and she realized with growing horror that she had no idea how far they had come from town. She had been focused on Emma, not paying attention to the route. She forced herself to stand. If she stayed here, she would freeze to death, and then her baby would truly be lost forever. Rose turned in a circle, trying to get her bearings through the blinding snow. The road stretched in both directions, already filling in with fresh powder. She thought they had been traveling west, away from Cripple Creek, heading toward the Novak ranch that sat in a valley between two peaks. If she walked back the way they had come, she might reach town. Might. Her fingers were already numb inside her gloves, and her face felt like it was being scraped raw by the wind. Rose started walking, each step an effort as the snow grabbed at her skirts and boots. She tried to keep to where she thought the road was, but everything looked the same, just endless white in every direction. Time lost all meaning. She fell twice, and the second time it took all her willpower to get back up. Her tears had frozen on her cheeks, and she could no longer feel her feet. The light was fading, which meant night was coming, and that would be the end. She would die out here in the cold, while her baby girl was being stolen away by those horrible people who blamed Rose for their son's death, as if she had somehow caused a horse to kick him. Through the snow, she saw a dark shape. At first, she thought she was hallucinating, but as she stumbled closer, she realized it was a horse, a big chestnut gelding with a rider hunched in the saddle, both of them moving slowly through the storm. "Help!" Rose tried to call out, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Help me." The rider must have seen her because the horse changed direction, plowing through the snow toward her. Rose's legs gave out, and she collapsed again, unable to go another step. Strong arms lifted her, and a deep voice said, Jesus Christ, what are you doing out here? She tried to explain, but her teeth were chattering too hard. The man she could see now, he was young, maybe in his mid-20s, with dark hair and a thick coat, pulled her against his chest and remounted his horse in one smooth motion, settling her in front of him. He wrapped his coat around both of them and urged the horse forward. "Stay awake," he commanded. "Do you hear me? You stay awake and keep talking to me." "My baby," Rose managed to say through her shivering. "They took my baby." "Who took your baby?" "My in-laws, the Novaks. They threw me out of the wagon and took Emma. I have to get her back. Please, I have to get her back." The man's arms tightened around her. "Right now, I need to get you somewhere warm before you die of exposure. Then we will figure out the rest." "Where do the Novaks live?" "Ranch, west of Cripple Creek. Valley, between the peaks." The words were getting harder to form. Rose felt so tired, and the man's body was warm against her back. "Do not fall asleep," he said sharply. "Tell me your name." "Rose, Rose Novak. But my maiden name was Nichols." "I'm Cole Xavier. I run a small ranch north of town. Been checking on my cattle before the worst of this storm hits. Lucky I decided to take the road back instead of cutting across country, or I never would have seen you." Rose wanted to thank him, but darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision. She felt Cole shake her gently, heard him telling her to stay with him, but it was so hard. She let her eyes close, just for a moment. When Rose opened her eyes again, she was lying in front of a roaring fire, covered in what felt like a dozen blankets. Her body ached everywhere, and her fingers and toes burned with a fierce pain that made her gasp. "That's good," Cole's voice said from somewhere nearby. "Pain means you are not frostbitten too badly. Here, drink this." He helped her sit up and held a cup of warm broth to her lips. Rose drank, the liquid spreading heat through her chest. As her mind cleared, everything came rushing back. Emma, the wagon being left in the snow. "My baby," she said, pushing the cup away and trying to stand. "I have to go get my baby." Cole gently but firmly pushed her back down. "You are not going anywhere tonight. That storm is getting worse and you can barely move. We will get your baby back, I promise, but we have to wait until morning. You do not understand. She is only 3 months old. She needs to nurse. They cannot feed her properly. And they are not right in the head. They blame me for my husband's death." Rose started crying again, hating how weak she sounded, but unable to stop. What if they hurt her? What if... Hey. Cole knelt beside her, and she got her first good look at him in the firelight. He had strong, honest features and dark brown eyes that held genuine concern. Parents might be crazy, but they are grandparents, right? They want the baby because they love her, not to hurt her. They will keep her safe until we can get her back. How can you promise that? You do not know them. You are right, I do not know them. But I know we have to be smart about this. If you go out there tonight, you will die, and then who will fight for your daughter?" His voice was steady and calm, and Rose found herself wanting to believe him. "We wait until morning, we get the sheriff involved, and we get Emma back the right way." Rose wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." Cole was quiet for a moment, feeding another log into the fire. "When I was 10 years old, my mother got sick. My father did not believe in doctors, said they were all quacks trying to steal his money. She died of pneumonia that could have been treated if he had just gotten help." He looked at Rose, and she saw old pain in his eyes. "I swore after that I would never turn away from someone who needed help. So here we are. I am sorry about your mother," Rose said softly. "It was a long time ago. Now you need to rest. There is some bread and cheese on the table if you are hungry, and the bedroom is through that door. You take the bed, I will sleep out here by the fire." This is your home. I cannot take your bed. Cole smiled for the first time, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and kind. My mother also taught me how to treat a lady before she died. You take the bed, Rose. That is not up for discussion. Rose was too tired and too worried to argue anymore. She ate a little bread, then made her way to the small bedroom. The bed was simple but clean, and the moment her head hit the pillow, she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. She woke to pale morning light filtering through the window and the sound of Cole moving around in the main room. Rose sat up, wincing at the soreness in her muscles, and realized she was wearing a man's shirt that hung to her knees. Her dress and undergarments were draped over a chair, dry now. She must have been more out of it than she remembered for Cole to have changed her clothes, but he had clearly been respectful about it. She dressed quickly and emerged to find Cole packing supplies into a saddlebag. He looked up when she entered. How are you feeling? Sore but alive, thanks to you. Rose looked out the window at the white landscape. The storm had passed, leaving everything buried under at least 2 feet of fresh snow. Can we go now, please? We are going to ride into town first and talk to Sheriff Burton. This needs to be done legally, or those in-laws of yours could claim you are the one trying to kidnap the baby. Rose had not thought of that, but Cole was right. What if the sheriff does not help? The Novaks have money and influence in Cripple Creek. My father was just a ranch hand before he died, and my mother took in sewing to support us. Then we will make him help. Cole's jaw was set in a determined line. That baby is yours by law and by rights. No grandparent can just steal a child from its mother. Now come eat something before we head out. They shared a simple breakfast of eggs and coffee, and Rose found herself studying Cole when he was not looking. He moved with the easy confidence of someone used to working with his hands, and there was a quiet strength about him that made her feel safer than she had in weeks. He caught her looking once and raised an eyebrow, and Rose quickly looked away, feeling her cheeks heat. "Thank you," she said as they prepared to leave. "I mean it. You saved my life last night." "We are not done yet," Cole said, helping her into her coat, which he had dried by the fire. "Saving your life does not mean much if we cannot get your baby back." They rode together on Cole's horse, Rose sitting in front of him again, like she had during the storm, though now she was conscious and very aware of his arms around her and his chest against her back. The ride into Cripple Creek took nearly an hour through the deep snow, and by the time they arrived, Rose's anxiety was nearly unbearable. The town was slowly digging itself out from the blizzard, shopkeepers shoveling paths through the snow, and townspeople calling greetings to each other. Several people stared as Cole and Rose rode past, and Rose knew they would be the subject of gossip by nightfall. A young widow riding into town wrapped in a strange man's coat, the scandal would spread like wildfire. Let them talk, she thought fiercely. All that mattered was getting Emma back. The sheriff's office was a small building near the center of town. Cole helped Rose dismount, and they went inside, finding Sheriff Burton warming his hands by a pot-bellied stove. He was in his 50s, with a thick mustache and shrewd eyes that took in Rose's disheveled appearance and Cole's protective stance beside her. "Miss Rose," the sheriff said, standing, "I heard about Thomas. Terrible tragedy. What brings you here?" Rose told him everything about living with the Novaks after Thomas's death, about their accusations and cold treatment, about being thrown from the wagon in the middle of the blizzard while they took Emma. Her voice shook with anger and fear as she described watching the wagon disappear with her baby inside. Sheriff Burton's expression grew darker as she spoke. When she finished, he looked at Cole. "And you are?" "Cole Xavier. I found Mrs. Novak on the road last night, nearly frozen to death. Took her to my ranch to recover." Cole's voice was steady and factual. "She is telling the truth, Sheriff. Someone left her to die in that storm." The sheriff rubbed his jaw. "That's attempted murder, if it can be proved, and kidnapping on top of it. But the Novaks will claim they were trying to protect the baby from an unfit mother. This is going to get ugly." I do not care how ugly it gets, Rose said, her hands clenched into fists. Emma is my daughter. They have no right to her. You are correct about that, legally speaking. A mother's rights supersede grandparents' rights unless there is clear evidence of neglect or abuse. Sheriff Burton reached for his coat. But I am going to need you to file a formal complaint, and then we will ride out to the Novak ranch. Cole, you willing to come as a witness? I am not leaving Rose's side until this is resolved, Cole said, and Rose felt a rush of gratitude so strong it brought tears to her eyes. They spent the next hour at the sheriff's office, Rose giving a formal statement and signing documents. By the time they were done, it was nearly noon, and Rose's nerves were stretched to the breaking point. Every minute that passed was another minute away from Emma. Finally, they rode out to the Novak ranch, Rose and Cole on his horse, Sheriff Burton on his own mount. The sky was clear and painfully blue, the sun glinting off the snow-covered landscape. Under other circumstances, it might have been beautiful. The Novak ranch came into view as they crested a hill, a sprawling property with a large main house, several barns, and miles of fencing marking their territory. Rose had lived there for the 2 years of her marriage to Thomas, and it had never felt like home. Thomas had been kind and gentle, nothing like his hard parents, and Rose had loved him in a quiet, comfortable way. But his death had revealed just how much his parents had resented her. Dogs began barking as they approached, and Harold Novak emerged from the barn, stopping short when he saw who was riding up to his house. His face hardened immediately. "Sheriff," he said curtly, "what is this about?" "You know exactly what this is about, Harold," Sheriff Burton said, dismounting. "Where is your wife and the baby?" "My granddaughter is in the house where she belongs. That woman," Harold pointed at Rose without looking at her, "is not welcome on this property." Rose slid down from Cole's horse before he could help her, her anger giving her courage. "That woman is Emma's mother, and you kidnapped her. You left me to die in a blizzard, Harold. How dare you talk about what is right?" Margaret appeared in the doorway of the house, and Rose saw she was holding Emma. Her heart leaped at the sight of her baby, and she started forward, but Cole's hand on her arm stopped her. "Let the sheriff handle it," he murmured. "Margaret, bring that baby here," Sheriff Burton called out. "Now!" "I will not," Margaret said, clutching Emma tighter. The baby was crying, a thin, hungry wail that tore at Rose's heart. "She is my granddaughter, my son's only child. That girl tried to take her away from us." "That girl is the child's mother and has legal custody," the sheriff said, his voice firm. "You took the baby by force and left Mrs. Novak in a blizzard. That is kidnapping and attempted murder. Now bring that baby here before I arrest both of you." "On whose word?" Harold demanded. "Hers? She is lying. She left the wagon herself, probably meeting some man. She never loved Thomas. She just wanted his money." "On my word," Cole said, stepping forward. His voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "I found Rose collapsed in the middle of the road, miles from anywhere, nearly dead from exposure. No woman would risk that voluntarily in a blizzard. You two did this, and you will answer for it." Harold's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who knows right from wrong. More than I can say for you." For a moment, Rose thought Harold might actually attack Cole. The older man's face turned red, his fists clenched at his sides. But Sheriff Burton stepped between them. "Enough. Margaret, I am not asking again. Bring that baby to her mother right now, or I will have my deputy arrest you both when we get back to town." Margaret's face crumpled, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "She is all we have left of him. She is all we have." For just a moment, Rose felt a flash of sympathy. They had lost their only son, and grief did terrible things to people. But then Emma let out another hungry cry, and Rose's maternal instinct overrode everything else. "Please," Rose said, her voice shaking. "Please give me my daughter. I know you are hurting. I am hurting too. Thomas was my husband, and I loved him. But Emma needs me. She needs her mother. Margaret looked at Rose for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted. She walked slowly down the steps from the porch, each step seeming to cost her something. When she reached Rose, she looked down at Emma one last time, then reluctantly handed her over. Rose took her baby into her arms and burst into tears. Emma was thinner than she had been, her little face red from crying, but she was alive and safe. Rose unbuttoned her coat and dress, and Emma latched on to nurse immediately, her cries stopping as she began to eat. "You are going to pay for this," Harold said, but his voice had lost its fire. He just sounded tired and old. "We will fight you in court. We will take that baby away from you properly." "Try it," Sheriff Burton said, "and I will make sure the judge hears about what you did. Leaving a young mother in a blizzard to die? There is not a court in Colorado that would give you custody after that." Rose barely heard them. She was focused entirely on Emma, on the feel of her baby in her arms again, the way Emma's small hand pressed against her chest as she nursed. Silent tears streamed down Rose's face. Cole's hand rested gently on her back. "You are okay now. Both of you are okay." The ride back to town was tense and silent. Harold and Margaret had retreated into their house, and Sheriff Burton warned them he would be filing charges. Rose sat in front of Cole again, cradling Emma, who had fallen asleep after nursing, her tiny face peaceful now that she was with her mother again. "What will you do now?" Cole asked quietly as they rode. Rose had been thinking about exactly that. "I cannot go back to my mother's house. She lives in a tiny room above the seamstress shop where she works. There is barely space for her, let alone me and Emma." She took a shaky breath. "I suppose I will have to find work and a place to live, though I have no idea how I will manage both with a baby." "You could stay at my ranch," Cole said, and Rose twisted to look at him in surprise. "Just temporarily," he added quickly, "until you figure things out. I have the space, and you would be safe there. The Novaks would not dare come after you with me watching. I cannot impose on you like that. You have already done so much." "It is not an imposition. Truth is, I could use some help around the place. I am not much of a cook, and the house is a mess most of the time. If you could handle some of the domestic work in exchange for room and board, we would call it even." Rose wanted to say no. She barely knew this man, and accepting his charity felt wrong. But the alternative was trying to find a job while caring for a newborn with no money and nowhere to live. And there was something about Cole that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in a long time. "Just until I can save enough to get my own place," she said finally. "That is fine with me." They stopped at the sheriff's office, long enough for Rose to confirm she wanted to press charges against Harold and Margaret. Then Cole guided his horse toward his ranch. Rose was exhausted. Emma was sleeping peacefully in her arms, and for the first time since Thomas's death, she felt like she might actually be able to survive this. Cole's ranch was modest compared to the Novak spread, but it was neat and well maintained. The house was small, just a main room with a kitchen area, a bedroom, and a loft space above. The barn was larger, built to house cattle during harsh weather, and there were several corrals and a chicken coop. "It is not much," Cole said as he helped Rose down from his horse, "but it is honest work, and it is mine. Well, it will be mine in another few years when I finish paying off the loan." "It is wonderful," Rose said honestly. After the cold grandeur of the Novak ranch, there was something appealing about the humble simplicity of Cole's home. He showed her around, pointing out where things were kept, then insisted she take the bedroom again. "I am used to sleeping in the loft or by the fire. You need privacy with the baby." Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Rose took over the cooking and cleaning, grateful to have something useful to do with her hands. Emma seemed to sense the change in atmosphere and became calmer, crying less and sleeping more. Cole was gone during the days tending to his cattle and fixing winter damage to his fences, but in the evenings he would come in for dinner and they would talk. Rose learned that Cole had bought his ranch 3 years ago with money he had saved from working cattle drives and as a ranch hand for larger outfits. He was 26 years old, had never been married, and had a quiet intensity about him that Rose found compelling. He asked her about her life, too, and Rose told him about growing up poor but happy, about meeting Thomas at a church social when she was 18, about their courtship and marriage. "Did you love him?" Cole asked one evening as they sat by the fire after Emma had gone to sleep. Rose considered the question. "I cared for him very much. He was gentle and kind, and he treated me well. But I was young, and he was the first man who showed real interest in me. I think I loved the idea of having a family and a home more than I loved Thomas himself." She looked at Cole, wondering if he would judge her for the admission. "Does that make me terrible?" "It makes you honest," Cole said. "A lot of marriages out here are about practical needs more than romance. There is nothing wrong with that. What about you? Has there never been anyone you wanted to marry?" Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "There was a girl when I was younger, but her parents thought I was not good enough, just a ranch hand with no prospects. She married a shopkeeper's son instead." He shrugged. "Maybe they were right. I did not have much to offer her then. And now? Now I have this place and my independence. But I have been too busy building the ranch to think much about romance." He looked at Rose, and something in his expression made her heart beat faster. "Until lately, anyway." Rose did not know what to say to that, so she changed the subject, asking about his plans for the ranch in the spring. But later, as she lay in bed with Emma sleeping beside her in a makeshift cradle Cole had built, she found herself thinking about the way Cole had looked at her and the unfamiliar flutter it had caused in her chest. 2 weeks after Emma's return, Sheriff Burton rode out to the ranch with news. "The Novaks have agreed to drop their custody claim in exchange for you not pressing charges," he told Rose. "They also want to know if they can have visiting rights with Emma." Rose's first instinct was to refuse entirely. They had tried to kill her and steal her baby, but she saw the weariness in the sheriff's face and understood that he was trying to broker a peace. "Once a month," she said finally. "Supervised visits at your office in town. And if they ever try anything like that again—" "They would not dare," Sheriff Burton said. "Harold knows how close he came to prison. They will behave themselves." After the sheriff left, Cole found Rose standing at the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. "You did the right thing," he said. "Emma should know her grandparents, even if they are difficult people." "I know, but part of me wants to keep her as far away from them as possible." Rose turned to face him. "Cole, I need to start thinking about finding my own place. I cannot live off your charity forever." "You are not living off charity. You have been earning your keep and then some. This house has never been so clean or well organized, and I have been eating better than I have in years." Cole moved closer, and Rose caught the scent of leather and winter air that seemed to cling to him. "Besides, I like having you here, both of you. Cole, I know it is too soon. I know you just lost your husband and you have been through hell, but I want you to know that when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would like to court you properly, with flowers and Sunday dinners and all the things a woman deserves." Rose's breath caught in her throat. She had been trying not to think about her growing feelings for Cole, telling herself it was just gratitude and proximity. But hearing him say those words out loud made something inside her chest expand with a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "I would like that too," she said softly. "When I am ready." Cole smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "Then I will wait, however long it takes." The rest of winter passed in a blur of daily routines and small, precious moments. Cole taught Rose how to milk the cow he kept for fresh dairy, and Rose taught him how to darn his own socks properly. They took turns rocking Emma when she was fussy, and Cole proved to have a surprising talent for making the baby laugh with funny faces. On Sundays, Cole would drive them into town in his wagon for church services, and Rose became aware of the gossip that surrounded them. She was a widow living with an unmarried man, which was scandalous enough, but what made it worse was that she seemed happy. Widows were supposed to be tragic and bereaved, not smiling and laughing with a handsome cowboy. People are talking, she mentioned to Cole one evening. Let them talk. Anyone with eyes can see I have been sleeping in the loft and treating you with respect. He paused. Unless the talk bothers you, I could ask one of the neighbor women to come stay as a chaperone if you want. No, Rose said quickly. The last thing she wanted was some nosy neighbor reporting back to the town on every detail of their lives. I do not care what they say. As spring began to arrive, melting the snow and turning the world green again, Rose realized she had been at Cole's ranch for almost 3 months. Emma was growing fast, becoming more alert and responsive, her small hands reaching for everything. And Rose found herself thinking less about Thomas and the life she had lost, and more about the future she might build here with Cole. The first time he kissed her was on a warm April evening. They had been outside watching the sunset, Emma asleep in Rose's arms, when Cole had taken her hand and said, I have waited long enough. Tell me if this is wrong. Then he had leaned in and kissed her gently, carefully, like she was something precious that might break. Rose had kissed him back, feeling a spark of something she had never felt with Thomas, a deep, thrilling awareness that made her whole body come alive. When they pulled apart, Cole was looking at her with such open affection that Rose felt tears prick her eyes. I am falling in love with you, he said simply. I thought you should know. I am falling in love with you too, Rose whispered back. I think I have been for a while now. After that, their relationship shifted into something deeper and more certain. Cole continued to sleep in the loft, insisting on propriety, but they spent every evening together talking and planning for the future. He wanted to expand his ranch, maybe buy some of the land adjacent to his property. Rose wanted to start a garden and maybe raise chickens to sell eggs in town. In June, Cole asked her to marry him properly, with a ring he had bought with money he had been saving. It was a simple gold band with a small diamond, and Rose thought it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. I know I am not wealthy like the Novaks, Cole said as he slipped it onto her finger, but I promise I will work hard every day to give you and Emma a good life. I will never raise my hand to you, never speak cruel words, and I will love that little girl like she is my own daughter. Yes, Rose said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you. They were wed in the church in Cripple Creek on a bright July morning with half the town in attendance. Rose wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, and Cole wore his best suit. Emma, now 6 months old and growing more beautiful every day, was held by Rose's mother during the ceremony, babbling happily. To Rose's surprise, Harold and Margaret Novak attended the wedding. They sat in the back and did not speak to her before the ceremony, but as Rose and Cole were leaving the church, Margaret approached her. You look lovely, she said stiffly. Then with obvious effort, she added, Thomas would have wanted you to be happy, and Mr. Xavier seems like a good man. It was not exactly an apology, but Rose understood it was as close as she would get. Thank you. That means a lot. Margaret looked at Emma in Rose's arms. She looks like Thomas, around the eyes. She does, Rose agreed softly. And she will know who her father was when she is old enough to understand. I promise you that. Something in Margaret's rigid posture relaxed slightly. She nodded once, then returned to where Harold was waiting. It was not forgiveness on either side, not really, but it was a start. The reception was held at Cole's ranch, their ranch now, Rose thought with a thrill. Neighbors had brought food, and there was music and dancing. Rose danced with her new husband under the summer stars, Emma sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby, and felt happier than she had ever thought possible. That night, after all the guests had left, Cole carried Rose over the threshold of their home, a custom he insisted on despite her protests that they had been living there for months already. "Tonight is different," he said, setting her down gently in the main room. "Tonight you are my wife, and this is officially our home together." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, and Rose understood for the first time what it meant to make love with someone who truly cherished you. Cole was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and cared for, and afterward he held her close and whispered all the ways he planned to love her for the rest of their lives. The years that followed were not without their challenges. Ranching was hard work, and there were lean times when the cattle prices dropped or the weather turned harsh. But Rose and Cole faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing season. When Emma was 2 years old, Rose discovered she was pregnant again. Cole was overjoyed, and Emma was excited at the prospect of a sibling, even though she did not fully understand what that meant. Rose gave birth to a son in the spring of 1888, and they named him Christopher after Cole's maternal grandfather. He was a robust, healthy baby with Cole's dark hair and Rose's green eyes, and Emma was immediately devoted to him, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to feeding time. The Novaks continued their monthly visits with Emma, though the meetings were stilted and formal. But Rose noticed that as Emma got older and began to talk, Margaret would sometimes smile at something her granddaughter said, and Harold would occasionally bring small wooden toys he had carved. It was progress, however slow. When Christopher was 1 year old, Cole finally saved enough money to buy the adjacent property, expanding their ranch significantly. It meant more work, but also more security for their growing family. They hired a young ranch hand to help with the increased workload, and Rose started selling her preserves and baked goods in town, adding to their income. Emma started attending the small school in Cripple Creek when she turned 6, and Rose was amazed at how smart and curious her daughter was. The teacher said Emma had a real talent for reading and writing, and Rose made sure there were always books in the house for her to explore. In the fall of 1891, Rose gave birth to their third child, a daughter they named Clara. Emma was 7 now, and Christopher was 3, and both of them were fascinated by their tiny sister. Cole had built an addition onto the house the previous summer, giving them more space, and Rose finally felt like they had truly built something lasting. One evening, when Clara was a few months old, Rose stood at the window watching Cole play with Emma and Christopher in the yard. He was teaching Emma how to rope a fence post, while Christopher dodged around, getting in the way and laughing. The sight made Rose's heart swell with love and gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked later that night as they lay in bed, Clara sleeping in her cradle beside them. "About how different my life is now compared to 6 years ago. If you had not found me that night in the blizzard, I would have died." Emma would have grown up with the Novaks, never knowing her real mother. None of this, she gestured around their room, would exist. Cole pulled her closer. "I think about that sometimes, too. How one decision to take the road instead of cutting across country changed everything. But I do not believe it was just luck or chance. I think we were meant to find each other." "Do you really believe that?" "I do. You needed someone to save you, and I needed someone to save me right back. Before you came into my life, I was just going through the motions, working, sleeping, working some more. You gave me a reason to build something bigger than just a ranch. You gave me a family." Rose kissed him softly. "I love you so much. More than I ever thought I could love anyone." "I love you too. Always will." The years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Emma grew into a smart, strong-willed young woman who announced at age 14 that she wanted to be a teacher. Rose and Cole supported her ambitions, saving money to send her to the teacher training program in Colorado Springs when she was old enough. Christopher proved to have a natural talent with animals and announced that he wanted to expand their ranch even further, maybe start breeding horses in addition to cattle. Cole began teaching him everything he knew about ranching, and Rose watched with pride as her son learned to ride and rope and work the land. Clara, the baby, turned out to be the most adventurous of all their children. By age 5, she was climbing trees and catching frogs, and declaring that she was going to be a cowgirl when she grew up. Cole built her a small saddle for her pony, and she rode it fearlessly around the property. In 1897, when Emma was 13, something unexpected happened. Harold Novak died of a heart attack while working in his barn. Margaret asked if Rose would come to the funeral, and Rose agreed, bringing Emma with her. At the service, Margaret looked decades older than her years, shrunken and lost without her husband. After it was over, she approached Rose and Emma. "I want to apologize," she said, her voice trembling, "for what we did to you all those years ago. It was wrong. We were crazy with grief, but that is no excuse. We tried to kill you and steal your baby, and I have lived with that guilt every day since." Rose was stunned. She had never expected this, never thought Margaret would acknowledge what had really happened. "I appreciate you saying that. Emma is a beautiful, smart young lady," Margaret continued, looking at her granddaughter with tears in her eyes. "You raised her well. Better than we could have done, I think. Harold never said it, but I know he was proud of how she turned out." Emma, who had been told the truth about what her grandparents had done when she was old enough to understand, looked at Margaret with a mixture of wariness and sympathy. "Thank you, grandmother." After that day, something shifted in their relationship. Margaret began visiting more often, and Rose found herself actually enjoying the older woman's company. Grief and guilt had softened Margaret's hard edges, and she proved to be a wonderful grandmother to Christopher and Clara, who had no complicated history with her. When Margaret died peacefully in her sleep 3 years later, Rose was surprised to find herself genuinely mourning the woman who had once tried to destroy her. Life, she thought, was strange and complicated, and people were capable of both terrible cruelty and genuine redemption. In 1903, Emma completed her teacher training and got a position at the school in Cripple Creek. She was 19 years old, confident and capable, and Rose could not have been prouder. Christopher, at 15, was already as tall as Cole and running half the ranch operations himself. Clara, at 12, was still insisting she would never marry and would instead become a famous rodeo rider. "Do you ever regret it?" Rose asked Cole one night as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were in their 40s now, with streaks of gray in their hair and laugh lines around their eyes. "Taking in a desperate widow with a baby and all the complications that came with us?" Cole took her hand, the gesture as natural and comfortable as breathing after all their years together. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Rose. You and our children and this life we built together. If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a thing. Even the parts where we almost lost the ranch, or when Christopher broke his arm falling off that horse, or when Clara decided to cut off all her hair because it was getting in her way." Cole laughed, the sound deep and warm. "Even those parts, all of it, the good and the bad, made us who we are, made us a family." Rose leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the Colorado sky turn pink and gold. 21 years ago, she had been thrown from a wagon into a blizzard, certain she was going to die. But that terrible moment had led her to Cole, to a love deeper and truer than anything she had imagined possible, to a family that filled her heart with joy every single day. "I was thinking," Cole said, breaking into her thoughts, "maybe it is time we took a trip. Just the two of us. Emma is old enough to watch her siblings for a few days, and I thought we could go to Denver. See the city, stay in a fancy hotel, have some adventures." Rose looked up at him in surprise. They had never taken a trip together, not in all their years of marriage. There had always been too much work, too many responsibilities. "Do you really think we could?" "I think we should. We have earned it, do not you think?" Rose thought about Emma at 19, Christopher at 15, and Clara at 12, all of them growing up so fast. Soon enough, they would have their own lives, their own families. This time with Cole was precious, and she wanted to savor every moment of it. "I think that sounds wonderful," she said, squeezing his hand. "An adventure for just the two of us." "Just like old times," Cole said with a smile, "except warmer and with better food and no one trying to steal our baby. Rose laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. Definitely an improvement. They took their trip to Denver that fall, leaving their children in Emma's capable hands. It was strange and wonderful to be just Rose and Cole again, with no one to care for but themselves. They stayed in a hotel with electricity and indoor plumbing, ate at restaurants with white tablecloths, and went to see a play at the Opera House. On their last night in the city, as they walked back to the hotel under the streetlights, Cole stopped suddenly and pulled Rose into his arms. "What is this about?" she asked, laughing. "I am just remembering that scared, half-frozen woman I found in the snow all those years ago, and thinking about how far we have come. You were so fierce even then. You had lost everything and nearly died, but all you could think about was getting your baby back. You saved me that night, in more ways than one." "We saved each other," Cole corrected. "You gave me a reason to be more than just a man with a ranch. You gave me a purpose, a family, a real life." He kissed her gently. "I love you, Rose. More today than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow." "That was almost poetic," Rose teased, but her eyes were shining with tears. "I love you too, always and forever." They returned home to their ranch and their children, slipping back into their daily routines. But the trip had reminded them both that they were not just parents and ranchers, they were partners who had chosen each other and built something beautiful together. In 1908, Emma married a young lawyer who had moved to Cripple Creek the previous year. Rose helped her daughter plan the wedding, remembering her own simple ceremony in the church 21 years earlier. Emma was radiant in her wedding dress, and the lawyer, whose name was David, clearly adored her. Christopher, now 20, had taken over most of the ranch operations, giving Cole more time to rest and enjoy the fruits of their labor. He had his eye on a neighboring ranch's daughter, and Rose suspected she would be planning another wedding soon. Clara, at 17, had indeed become something of a local legend for her riding skills. She had not quite become a rodeo star, but she helped train horses for several ranches in the area and showed no signs of settling down anytime soon. On the night of Emma's wedding, Rose and Cole sat on their porch again, watching the last guests leave and the stars come out overhead. "Our baby girl is married," Rose said softly. "The baby that all of this started with. It does not seem possible that she is old enough to have a husband." "Time moves faster than we think," Cole agreed. "But we have done right by her, Rose. She is happy and educated and marrying a good man who treats her well. What more could we ask for?" "Nothing," Rose said. "Absolutely nothing." She thought about Emma as a 3-month-old baby, wailing in Margaret's arms, while Rose ran through the snow trying to catch the wagon. She thought about how close she had come to losing her daughter forever, and how different all their lives would have been if Cole had not found her that night. Everything good in her life had come from that one terrible moment: Cole, their children together, the ranch, the life they had built. It was strange to think that the worst thing that had ever happened to her had ultimately led to the best things too. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, and Rose realized she had been quiet for a long time. "Just that I would go through it all again, the blizzard, the fear, all of it, because it led me to you." Cole put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You are getting sentimental in your old age." "We are not old. We are 45. "Fine. You are getting sentimental in your middle age." Rose elbowed him gently in the ribs, and he laughed. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the night sky and listening to the sounds of their ranch, the cattle lowing in the distance, the wind rustling through the grass, the creek that ran along their property bubbling over stones. This was home. This was everything she had ever wanted, even when she had not known she wanted it. A man who loved her truly and deeply, children who were growing into good people, a piece of land to call their own, and memories enough to fill several lifetimes. In 1910, Christopher married the neighboring ranch's daughter, a sweet girl named Sarah, who fit into their family perfectly. They built a house on the far end of the Xavier property, and Christopher announced that he and Sarah were expecting their first child the following year. "We're going to be grandparents," Rose said to Cole when Christopher told them the news. "How is that possible? I still feel like I am 25. "Your knees when you get up in the morning would disagree with that assessment," Cole teased. Their first grandchild, a boy named Thomas after Emma's father, was born in 1911. Rose held him for the first time and felt tears streaming down her face. She thought about the Thomas she had lost all those years ago and hoped somehow he knew that his name was being carried on, that his daughter had grown up happy and strong. Emma had her own children soon after, a daughter in 1912 and twin boys in 1914. Clara, still unmarried at 23, doted on all her nieces and nephews and declared that being an aunt was far superior to being a mother. Rose and Cole settled into their roles as grandparents with joy. They were still active enough to help with the children when needed, but they also had more time to simply enjoy each other's company. They would take long walks around the property, reminiscing about the early days and marveling at how much had changed. In 1915, on a warm summer evening, very much like so many others they had shared, Rose and Cole sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were 62 years old now, with more grandchildren than they could easily count, and a ranch that had prospered beyond their wildest dreams. "Do you remember the day we met?" Rose asked. "Really met? I mean, when you found me in the snow?" "I remember thinking you were the most stubborn woman I had ever encountered," Cole said with a smile. "Half dead from cold, and all you could talk about was getting your baby back. I was desperate." "You were a mother. There is a difference." Cole took her hand, his thumb rubbing across her knuckles in the familiar gesture she had come to love. "I am glad I took the road that day instead of cutting across country. I am glad I found you. I am glad for every single day we have had together. Even the bad ones? Especially the bad ones, because they made the good ones that much sweeter." Rose leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body next to hers, and knew that this was what love really meant. Not the passionate rush of new romance, though they had certainly had that in their younger years, but this steady, enduring affection that had weathered 30 years of marriage and all the challenges life had thrown at them. "I love you, Cole Xavier," she said softly. "I love you too, Rose Xavier, until my last breath and beyond." They sat together as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple, watching the stars come out one by one over the Colorado landscape they had called home for so long. Their children and grandchildren were nearby. The ranch was thriving, and they had each other. It was, Rose thought, more than enough. It was everything. And on quiet nights when the wind blew down from the mountains and scattered snow across the land, Rose would sometimes remember that terrifying night when she had been left to die in a blizzard. She would remember the moment Cole appeared out of the white void like an angel sent to save her, and she would give thanks for every choice and chance and moment that had led her to this life, this love, this home. Because sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what truly matters. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, we find someone who sees us at our most desperate and broken and loves us anyway. Rose had been that lucky, and every day for the rest of her life, she never forgot it. The years rolled on, and Clara finally surprised everyone by falling in love with a horse trainer from Wyoming at age 28. They married in 1916, and Clara continued working with horses alongside her husband on their own small ranch near the Xavier property. Emma's children and Christopher's children grew up practically as siblings, running wild across the ranch lands the way their parents had done before them. Rose and Cole watched them play and grow, seeing pieces of themselves and their own children in these new generations. In 1920, Rose and Cole celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. Their children organized a large party at the ranch, with what seemed like half of Cripple Creek in attendance. There were speeches and toasts, and Emma read a poem she had written about her parents' love story. When it came time for Rose and Cole to say something, Cole stood and helped Rose to her feet. They faced their assembled family and friends, and Cole cleared his throat. 50 years ago, Rose agreed to marry me, And it was the smartest thing she ever did, he began, and everyone laughed. But truthfully, I am the lucky one. This woman has been my partner, my friend, my love, and my reason for everything I have done since the day I found her. We have had our share of hardships, but we have faced them together, and that has made all the difference. Here is to 50 more years. I will be 117, Rose pointed out, and everyone laughed again. Then we will be old together, Cole said, and kissed her while their family cheered. Rose looked around at all the faces, her children, her grandchildren, her friends and neighbors, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. The scared, desperate girl who had been thrown into a snowstorm was long gone, replaced by this woman who had lived and loved and built something lasting. That night, alone in their room, Cole helped Rose out of her party dress and into her nightgown. They moved slower now, their bodies aged and marked by 7 decades of life, but there was still tenderness in every touch. "Thank you," Rose said as they climbed into bed. "For what?" "For finding me, for saving me, for loving me all these years, for giving me the life I never knew I wanted but needed more than anything." Cole pulled her close, and they lay together in the darkness of their room, listening to the sounds of their grandchildren settling down in the other bedrooms, the familiar creaks and sighs of the house they had built together. "The pleasure," Cole said softly, "has been entirely mine." They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, just as they had done for 50 years. And outside their window, the Colorado night spread vast and starlit above their ranch, their home, their life. Rose Xavier née Nichols lived to be 81 years old, passing peacefully in her sleep in 1936 with Cole holding her hand. Cole followed her just 8 months later, unable to imagine a life without his beloved wife by his side. They were buried together in the cemetery overlooking Cripple Creek, their headstones simple but perfect. Together in life, together in eternity. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren continued to work the ranch and tell the story of how Rose and Cole met the dramatic rescue in the blizzard, the stolen baby, the love that grew from tragedy into something beautiful and lasting. It became family legend, passed down through generations, a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures, and that true love is worth fighting for, waiting for, and cherishing every single day. And on winter nights, when the snow fell heavy on Colorado and the wind howled down from the mountains, the Xavier descendants would gather around fires in their homes and tell the story of how it all began with a woman who refused to give up, a man who chose to help, and a love that changed everything.